Welcome, everybody, to the Fifth Round Podcast with your host, Ian Ford, Brian France. I'm your producer extraordinaire, Brian, the closer, Mariano. Now, guys, we had a very heated debate last week, especially Ian taking his one side that, actually, you both were kind of against me on this, and it seemed we were 24 hours too early for this talk because as we talked and debated over Chris Cyborg and the effects of weight cutting, the day after it came out that she had failed a drug test. And Ian, you weren't surprised by this, were you?
No, not at all. Now everything kind of looks a little clearer as to why she might not have taken some fights, because she probably knew this was coming down the pipe. The moment she got tested, she probably knew she was screwed. So she probably started turning fights down immediately. And it's sad. Now, a lot of people have been talking about what she took, and it could be because of this, and it could be because of that. The bottom line is we don't know. We're not even sure that she got flagged for what she's saying she got flagged for. That's just what she's released. Hey, this is what I got caught with. What she got caught with, I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, but it's a diuretic.
Spironolactone?
It's a diuretic.
That's the best I could get out of that one.
So, let's just get it out front real quick. There's a couple reasons you can take it. One would be to help cut weight. Unless she's got a fight coming up, there's no reason to cut weight. It could be to help recover from a weight cut, which is possible. Or the most common use in combat sports, which everybody seems to want to tiptoe around and not mention with her right now, is to mask taking another substance like an anabolic steroid. You can take a diuretic like that because it will flush your system and push the metabolites of a steroid out and mask what's left so that you don't pop on a drug test for steroids, which is why those substances are banned through USADA. And this is a woman who's been caught with an anabolic steroid, not one, but two in her system before. So
yeah, but that wasn't under USADA. Am I right?
No, that was through basic testing.
Yeah.
But now you've got an experienced fighter who's used them before and been caught with them before and might now be looking for a way around them. And I'm not saying that's the case, but to just discard that possibility
and
throw it out is a disservice. Bottom line is she got caught again. Whether it was cheating on purpose or not, she got caught yet again. So all this talk about a title fight with Cyborg can get put on the back burner for at least 365 days because she's not going to fight yet again. And the woman who had a steroid label attached to her, and that was the one negative thing people could bring out on her, just got her name dragged through the mud again because she failed another drug test.
Well, it's interesting just to go through it here because she issued a statement saying that she's sorry to her fans. And one of the interesting parts here, Ian, in France, I know you were pretty much against it, and you were pretty adamant about this last week, about how she has been known to do this. So she mentioned that I can feel confident that the substance that everyone is acquiring about is not a performance-enhancing use. It is needed for specific treatments. And then she continued on by saying it was severe weight cutting that caused her to seek medical attention, ultimately leading to this drug test failure. I've cut from more than 170 pounds to 140 in her last two UFC bouts, including her last one that she won by TKO in Brazil. It is my hope that my experiences will continue to bring awareness to the dangers of extreme weight cutting. I cut weight 3 times in 8 months during 2016 competition, twice at 140 pounds. It is because the measures needed, I required a 140-pound weight limit on September 24th that my body is needing the ongoing medical treatment.
Okay, so there's a couple things coming off this. One, if you were going to take something like that from a doctor, there is a very easy system set up by USADA and the UFC to take that substance with a prescription as long as you get a use exemption from USADA.
Which she didn't do.
Which she absolutely did not do. She tried to hide it, and she didn't disclose it on the test. When they gave her the paperwork to take the test, she didn't even list that medication as something she was taking, which means she was trying to hide it. 2, I hate, and I know Brian will probably agree with me on this, I hate the term performance-enhancing drug. Because guess what? Tylenol, caffeine, medicine in general, they enhance performance. or they're not medicine.
The coffee you're drinking right now to do this podcast.
Absolutely.
It's performance enhancing.
You take Tylenol, it gets rid of your headache and enhances your performance. If it didn't enhance your performance, it would be illegal. It would be malpractice for a doctor to give it to you. You would not be allowed to do that. It definitely enhances your performance in one way or another.
And it's not like USADA says we're banning these enhancement drugs. It's just this is the banned list that you can't take anything from, not just for enhancing your athletic ability or whatever performance inside the ring. It's more of just you can't take this because we tell you not to.
Yep. And to go back to it one more time, it's if you're telling me you have to cut from over 170 pounds, she's going to cut from 170 to 145. That's still not healthy. Instead of complaining about how hard it is to get to 140 and 145 from over 170 pounds, how about not doing 100 or 250 pound deadlifts every day? How about cutting down a little bit of weight and slimming down so the weight cut's not terrible? Because you have guys who fight at Conor McGregor fighting at 155 pounds. You think he doesn't want to go out and get jacked and lift every weight in the world and gain 30 pounds? He'd love to. But you're never going to make the weight you fight at if you do that. Mm-hmm. So every other fighter manages their weight, and she just goes out and turns into She-Hulk and then complains that they're making me cut weight. Mm-hmm. Well, maybe you should walk around at 160 instead of 170 because she looks like, to quote Dana White, Vanderlei Silva in a dress.
And she said that the doctor that gave this to her, this was one of her reports. She gave out a statement after this was reported that I was given a medical suspension by one of my doctors into competition-style training or weight-cutting practices during the period of recovery. This is one of the reasons why I declined the UFC fight on February 11th for the first 145 belt. I was not confident that I could reach that weight. So the issue is basically what she was saying, like we were talking about last week, where she's trying to cut too much weight in too short amount of time, and not so much just, a month or two to cut 30 pounds, but she's doing it in January, then doing it again in May, and then doing it again in September.
Sure.
So,
which I agree is not all that healthy, but there are guys who wrestle in high school and do it every week. And there are plenty of fighters who do it more often than her. And even if that's the case, it's still not an excuse to cheat, and it's still not an excuse to do all the complaining she does. It's still going to be on her. It's her fault. She has to watch what she puts in her body. She has to manage her weight. She has to do all these things, not the UFC. So quit throwing the blame around. It's your fault.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Michael Bisping came out right after Anthony Pettis was 3 pounds overweight, saying, don't call the doctor the day before your fight when you're weight cutting because you're obviously going to be unhealthy. All of us aren't going to be healthy when we do this. If we ask a doctor for his help, they're going to tell us stop weight cutting because it's unhealthy.
So honestly, it's the whole thing is dumb. And the UFC's had issues with people in the past and this kind of thing. Anthony Johnson comes to mind. Mm-hmm. The guy fights at 205 pounds right now, is a murderer, and is contending for a title. He used to fight at 170 with the same body weight. He'd cut from the same weight and try to get to 170. The guy would walk around at 220 and try to make 170 pounds. Mm-hmm. And sometimes he made it, and sometimes he didn't. And despite the fact that he kept winning, the UFC cut him and said, that's it, you're done. We don't want you around anymore. I don't care if you're knocking people out making highlight reels. You're out because you can't make weight. So why is it okay for her to keep missing weight or her to keep complaining about how hard it is? You need to make a new weight class for me, but everybody else has just got to conform to the rules or they're out.
Yeah,
I'm done.
It's definitely interesting. And, we hit most of this last week, but now it's a whole big deal because it happened less than 24 hours after we taped the podcast that it comes out that she had failed a drug test. Now, one issue, though, you did mention she tested positive for steroids in 2011, although the reports are saying that it's unlikely that that's going to be taken into account because it wasn't under USADA that this happened. So however long her suspension ends up being, it's not going to be taken into effect of what she was tested positive for in 2011. Now, in this article that I was looking up on MMAfighting.com, when they really pushed this, it definitely... My question to you guys is, one, how long do you think the suspension is going to be? And two, this says here, Cyborg hasn't lost a fight since 2005, and she is the most dominant female fighter in the world. I want your opinion on that.
When you fight nobodies.
All right. So the
All right, so
suspension
how long
is
the
going to be
suspension? Yep.
6 months to a year. A year would be what I would expect normally. If she goes back and gets a retroactive use exemption, it'll probably be 6 months.
Okay.
Now, most dominant female fighter in the world, if you take into account competition, sure, she's better than everyone she fights because she fights girls who, if I took all the female fighters in the world and ranked them 1 to 100, she might have fought 1 or 2 people in the top 100. 1 to 2, and that's it. Whereas I can look at it and go, Ronda Rousey in her last 8 fights fought 8 people in the top 100. Cyborg crushed a ton of tomato cans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how hard is it? It's like taking a baseball bat out and crushing softballs instead of baseballs. I mean, she's just getting them lobbed right up in her face and crushing them. If she goes against the top 10 at 135 and weight is not a factor, she probably loses 9 out of 10.
Yeah, but I don't really, and after the discussions we've had over the last week or so, I don't think weight will ever not be an issue at this point.
No, not with her. That's how she wins fights, though. This is the biggest issue, is she complains about having to come down in weight, but when you watch her fight girls, she's fighting smaller girls and winning because she can just throw them around the cage and outmuscle them.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, it'd be like a heavyweight fighting against George St. Pierre. Well, if George St. Pierre and Brock Lesnar get in the same cage, St. Pierre has 100 times the skill of Lesnar. But Lesnar's still going to squash the crap out of him because he's 300 pounds and St. Pierre is walking in at like 190, 195. So Lesnar's going to murk him, even though it's pretty obvious who's more skilled as an athlete and a martial artist. Size matters.
Sure. Oh, there's no doubt. And absolutely, after you hear this, there's definitely more questions than there are answers coming out of this, because not only we talked about it the last week and obviously in the beginning of this episode of the effects of weight cutting and just hearing all the issues behind Chris Cyborg. But guys, let's move on from what we thought, or what one writer said was the most dominant female fighter in the world, to who we all would say is one of the top 1 or 2 female fighters in the world, and that is Ronda Rousey. She's going to headline UFC 207 this weekend on pay-per-view against Amanda Nunes. Now, guys, yes, Ronda Rousey's the biggest name, but before we get into who's going to win this fight, what do you expect to happen in the octagon this weekend between these two?
Really going to be one of 2 things. I think Brian's going to go the same way as I am.
Mm-hmm. Most likely. I mean, Amanda Nunes, she comes out, rushes right towards you, either tries to take you down or knock you out. And with how Ronda Rousey counter reacts to it is going to be the difference in the fight. If she gets caught, I mean, she's probably going to go out. But most likely she's going to grab her in the clinch and take her down and submit her.
Yeah, I mean, there's only 1 or 2 ways this ends for me, and that's Rousey getting her face busted open again, or Rousey dropping Nunes on her head and armbarring somebody again. I don't think this leaves the second, probably not leaving the first. But
it probably won't leave the first 2 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, this is 2 fighters who like to come straight out and run straight headlong into each other, and I don't see this going long. If this goes past 10 minutes, there's going to be boos everywhere because it is not going to be a good fight.
Yeah,
it will slow down a lot after the second round.
I'll take a look, and with you guys throwing your input in, I'll throw in another input, and this was an article written by Damon Martin on UFC.com, and he went through this entire card on what he thinks might happen if you were out there. Like Ian, I know you play a lot of UFC fantasy out there. You pick the round, you pick how it's going to end, what the result is going to be. So ultimately, I want to, before I give him what he said, what exactly do you think? So we know this probably shouldn't go out of 10 minutes, the first round, second round. Who wins ultimately?
I'm going to have... I've been debating this all week, and it changes day to day. Today, I'm going to go with Rousey by armbar in the second.
Okay. France?
In the second.
Gets out of the first round, according to Ian.
It's really hard because of how tough Amanda Nunes is in that first round. But I'm seeing Ronda Rousey catching her slipping some of Amanda's initial attack, get her down, and submit her in the first.
Yeah. I'm gonna guess, listening to Damon Martin every week, that he probably went with Nunes.
His prediction is Amanda Nunes by TKO in the first round.
Could have guessed.
Yes, he explained it pretty much like you guys said. He goes that both of them are going to go at each other early, and especially going off of what happened with Holly Holm last time out when the Ronda Rousey, he says if Nunes can stay calm and be patient during the first few exchanges, she has a great shot to pull off this victory at 207, which ultimately seems like all the action is going to happen in the first few minutes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We're going to see who's really prepared and ready for this fight. Now, the question is, Ian, you went with Rousey. Is there any doubt in your mind that maybe her mind is elsewhere other than in the octagon right now?
Absolutely. There's a couple of X factors in this fight. One is going to be, where is Rousey's mindset in ring rust? That's a real thing. She hasn't been in a real fight in over a year. Now she's going to step into that cage, and where's her head going to be at, and how long is it going to take her to find the comfortable rhythm, and how long is it going to take her to find the focus? Because you need to get into that flow state to where things just happen and you react, and you don't have to consciously think about every step. Every time you think, you're slow. And when you're slow, you get hit in the face. And she's not going to react well, more than likely, to getting cracked across the jaw by Amanda Nunes, because she's still caught up on the Holly Holm head kick. Now, at the same time, there's a lot of other X factors in there. And one of them is going to be, this is her with a full camp. What people seem to forget is when she lost to Holly Holm in Australia, she had a 44-day camp. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
she was only on 44 days' notice. She wasn't supposed to be on that card.
Yeah.
Robbie Lawler got hurt. They called her up and said, save this. And she said, absolutely, and came in with 44 days' notice. Normally, they go 12 weeks.
Sure.
Especially when she... whole different.
Yeah, she had to do so much more media obligation for that fight because she wasn't expecting to do any of it. And now she's actually, I think she's not even doing media week.
No, she's doing very little, and everybody's asking how come Conor McGregor didn't want to do it, and he got suspended at UFC 200 and taken off the card, and how come she's allowed to do it? Because she put it in her contract. Mm-hmm. It's signed in that says she doesn't have to do these things. Conor's contract said he did. Hers says she doesn't. But I think it's going to be a whole lot different story with her having 12 weeks of a real, legitimate, good camp, as opposed to, 44 days, which was almost nothing.
And plus, this guy's comparing her Amanda Nunes to Holly Holm.
Totally different.
They're completely different fighters. There's no way that same situation could happen because Holly Holm was a counter striker. She doesn't go in. She waited for Rousey to come in after her, and she's got the length and the striking ability that Amanda Nunes doesn't have.
Like I don't want to put words in his mouth, but what else? This is the excerpt that he wrote at the end. He goes, at her best, Rousey is still one of the most dangerous fighters in the world, but questions surrounding her return and how she will react being in the octagon again for the first time after her loss to Holm have been taken into account. Nunes is well aware of what Rousey represents, but if she can stay calm and be patient during these first few exchanges, she has a great chance to pull up the victory over Ronda Rousey.
Now, see, there's the question. Can she be calm and stay patient? Because she's never shown it. She's a wild woman.
That seems to be the question. Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't think she can be calm and stay patient.
No, I think she's more aggressive than Ronda is in that first minute.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen it. We've seen it through Holly Holm's record. Holly was just, and we'll say it 100 times, styles make fights. She was the perfect style to fight Rousey. Mm-hmm. She was 100% big, long, strong, good hips to shirk out of a judo takedown, and just had the ability to dance around the outside and throw short punches. Just quick, snapping little jabs and rights just to keep Rousey on the edge. Nunes is not the same person. She is not a technical mastermind. She's just a monster. Is she technically better than Rousey? More than likely. Rousey's not technically all that good with her striking. She throws like a truck, but that's about it. Nunes has got technique on her, but it's not the same kind of technique as Holm. I expect her to land on her head at some point and get armbarred.
Mm-hmm.
All right, guys. Of course, it is Fifth Round Podcast with your host, Ian Ford, Brian France. I'm the producer extraordinaire, Brian, the closer, Mariano. Now, guys, of course, Nunes and Rousey is going to be headlining this, but there are many other good fights that we can see on this card Saturday night. Dominic Cruz is going to take on Cody Garbrandt. Am I saying that right?
That is correct.
Yeah, I'm not too bad at this,
I know
guys.
Brian's really excited about this one, so I'll let him start with that.
Oh, France is pretty excited about this one. So, guys, Dominic Cruz is a big favorite in this one. France, how do you see this playing out in the octagon?
This one's going to be hard. I've been ever since Cody Garbrandt was first announced he was signed with UFC, I was excited because I knew he was a Team Alpha male guy. He was an amateur boxer. He was something with was a really high pedigree with wrestling.
Okay.
I mean, but then you have him face one of probably the best ever at 135 pounds, Dominic Cruz. He hasn't lost at 135 pounds since he became champ in WEC.
Yeah. He's never lost at 135.
The only person that's hurt him is himself with his ACL injuries. So it's going to be interesting. But with the knockout power of Cody Garbrandt, he could knock him out in maybe third round, but the first 2 rounds it's going to be rough.
It's definitely a different challenge than Cruz has ever faced before. I mean, this is as close as an undefeated champions fight as you're going to get. Cruz has lost 1 fight ever. That was in 2007 at 145 pounds against Uriah Faber. The only fight he's ever lost. He's undefeated at bantamweight since. And Cody Garbrandt is undefeated.
That was future Hall of Famer Uriah Faber, right? That's right?
Don't-
Is that what we were going at?
Yep.
I wanted to make sure we said that. Okay, I just wanted to
So-
make sure.
And Cody Garbrandt is undefeated. And I don't know if Cruz at 135 has ever faced a guy with the length and power of Garbrandt.
Definitely not the power.
And I know it's cliche to say, oh, he's never faced another guy like him, but he really honestly hasn't. 135 does not have a lot of knockout artists in it.
I mean,
It's a lighter weight class.
the only other one that could be arguable for knockout power was Renan Barão, but he was never able to face him.
No, and he just didn't have the length or the style of Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt's hands are insane. And everything he throws, he's a mini Chuck Liddell.
Mm-hmm.
He really is. Everything he throws is to take your head clean off.
That's a big statement.
In the
That's
smack
impressive.
talk that they've had going on.
Oh, my
the,
God.
The Fox, the last card they had up on Fox with Paige Van Zant, Michelle Waters. Did I actually say her last name right? Watterson. I was close. I'm sorry.
Hey, man.
Karate
That's cool.
Hottie.
There you go.
They were talking so much smack that they had to bleep out half of the stuff they were saying to each other.
Oh, my God. Garbrandt's girlfriend goes on Twitter and decides to tweet at Dominic Cruz. Wrong idea.
What is
Dominic
with
Cruz
what
turns
is with
around and
girls
shuts
getting
down.
on there and going after people? Like wives, you see it in like the NFL and stuff
Oh,
too.
yeah.
What are they doing?
Dominic Cruz shut it down. Not only did he shut her up real quick, but then he turned around and crushed Cody Garbrandt for a month and a half, 2 months for like, oh, you got to have your woman fight your battles for you.
Oh,
Like,
man.
We see who wears the pants in your relationship.
You're just asking for trouble doing that.
All bad. And Garbrandt's calling him old, washed up,
Pillow hands.
saying he's going to kick his knee out from underneath him. And Dominic Cruz is just, to be honest, I love Cody Garbrandt, but I don't see any way Dominic Cruz loses this at all. No way.
He has a chance of losing, but it's tough. It's most likely going to go to decision, and Dominic Cruz is going to have his hand raised at the end.
He's never lost at this weight, and until he does, I'll never pick against him.
It's more because he can't get hit. He knows how to move. His distance and his movement, his footwork, his ability to strike, counter strike is up there with the best.
And I didn't used to be a fan of Dominic Cruz. I used to actually really strongly dislike him. I'll stop just short of hate him. I love that guy now. After the last couple of years listening to him talk and watching his fights, how can you not love him?
So you're both going Cruz by decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cruz doesn't generally get to finishes, but I think he definitely wins.
So we go to UFC.com for a decision on this, or another input, rather. And Damon Martin, I'll give you his excerpt here. It comes down to Garbrandt's power versus Cruz's precision. Cruz has certainly proven time after time that he can nearly embarrass anyone with his quick movement and incredible hand speed. But he's going up against a legitimate one-punch knockout striker who isn't just closing his eyes and throwing haymakers. Garbrandt is also a strong technical boxer and can cut off the cage and not allow Cruz to dictate the pace. And he has a great shot of putting together the right string of punches to get the finish. I will take Cody Garbrandt by TKO in round 3.
Wow, Damon Martin's just trying to go over today, huh?
Listen, man, I know you want to take shots now because you had that night, at UFC Fight Night in Albany, like you're the greatest pick ever. But come on now. All right, listen, this is recorded. It'll be great. We'll make sure we'll hit up Damon Martin on Twitter or something, and you can let him know. Hey,
Sure.
Take a listen to this. I'll let you know who's picking correctly, and then we'll go against him because I'm not the expert here. I'm just reading from one of the experts. That's all.
Oh,
Damon, if you find it out here, it's Brian the Closer, Mariano. I didn't do any of this. I have no idea what we're talking about. But
Listen, I mean, earlier when I was saying stuff, Cody Garbrandt can knock him out. I don't see in the first
you
or
did say
second,
that.
and I said the third. But when it comes down to it, I think Dominic Cruz has a better chance at winning it than Cody Garbrandt does.
All right, now the next one up, I think we might have a little bit of disagreement on.
okay.
TJ Dillashaw, the former bantamweight champ, Dominic Cruz took that belt away, versus John Lineker. I am without a doubt going to go with TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw, who Cody Garbrandt, by the way, is talking as much crap about him as he is about Dominic Cruz, and they used to be teammates. They were teammates a year ago. And Cody Garbrandt's calling him pillow-fisted, saying he's got nothing, he's got no ground game, I can't wait to kill him next. So this should be fun. But I have TJ Dillashaw easily by decision. I don't think John Lineker's got almost anything for him. John Lineker's got some power, but I don't think he can keep the pace. I don't think he can deal with the footwork. I don't think he can take the wrestling. I think TJ Dillashaw takes that easy. But I don't think France is going to agree with me, at least not in principle here.
I don't think
Easily,
it's
he
going
says
to be easy. John Lineker has a lot of power in his hands.
Sure he does.
A lot of people are scared of him, scared of his knockout power. And I mean, yeah, TJ Dillashaw is faster. He's definitely more technical sound with his striking and wrestling, but you're going to be on your feet most of the fight. And Lineker's strong. He might be able to take stop a lot of those takedowns.
He might be able to stop a takedown, but you're talking about Dominic Cruz light. TJ Dillashaw is going to be running circles around him in that cage. Same kind of footwork. He's going to pepper him. I don't see it being any issue, but I don't really like John Lineker much anyways. No. He's another one of those guys who can't seem to make weight.
I mean, I'm not that big of a fan of him either, but I do have to kind of give him props for his knockout power that he has. And if he's able to connect to TJ Dillashaw's chin, he can easily knock him out.
He could turn the lights off. It's not like TJ's never been knocked out.
All right, guys.
It was only once, and that was Jad Donson.
So we're going different here, though. So obviously, Ian, you're taking Dillashaw, knockout or decision?
I'm going to go with Dillashaw by decision.
Okay. France? Still undecided as he ponders over his cell phone to figure out exactly which way he wants to go here. I sound like Vern Lundquist at the Masters, waiting on France at the 18th hole.
I'm going to go with John Lineker.
He's going with John Lineker.
Knockout second round.
Where'd my buddy Damon end up?
Damon is showing, he says Dillashaw always has shown constant movement in his fights, and as long as he doesn't decide to suddenly turn this into a brawl, he should be able to frustrate Lineker with his fast footwork. Look for Dillashaw to stick and move while peppering Lineker with shots from the outside. Lineker will certainly try to charge ahead with a barrage of strikes, so don't discount his ability to land a staggering combination of punches that could end the fight. Dillashaw has more ways to win with a strong kickboxing attack, better defense, and a slick wrestling game if he chooses to use it. I will take TJ Dillashaw by unanimous decision.
About time you got one right, David.
Oh, man, David. Like I said, David, if you end up listening, please hit us up. Hit us up on our Facebook page. Call Ian out on Twitter and everything because I'd love to see you two go at it. Hopefully, we can have him join the show. Now, guys, we talked about this yesterday, Ian. We were hanging out at your house, and there was talks about the NFL this weekend and a special presentation that was on Christmas Eve after the football games. It was interesting because I was sitting at my aunt's house, and all of a sudden, after the end of the New Orleans game was off, I looked up and I saw UFC 206 was on Fox.
Absolutely.
Again. Mm-hmm. It was one of those where this was, in my opinion, I don't know exactly how you guys feel, this was genius.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm waiting on a night where everyone's getting together at someone's house, and they're most likely going to have the NFL on anyway. So whether they're actually going to pay attention or not, it's on their TV. And if they stumble across and be like, "Oh, this is interesting. Let's watch this."
And they tried extra hard. They sent out anybody. Now you're only going to get the people who subscribe to UFC.com's emails.
Yeah.
But I got emails for 3 days straight letting me know that Dana White and the UFC are putting on a special presentation just for me on Christmas Eve. And I was like, oh, okay, sure, that's going to be on. And then again, Christmas Day, okay, that's going to, great, I guess I can watch the fights. But you know what? All you need is me to be at a family party with 30 people and be like, oh, everybody's done with the football game, it's over, I'm going to turn the fights on. Now I got 30 people watching the fights.
Yep.
It's an ingenious move.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of those where, like, we talked about it a little last night, and it was one of the thoughts of you're grabbing another move by the UFC of saying, okay, I'm going to get the regular listener, which I'm turning into with you guys now. The regular watcher, like, I'm going to make sure I watch UFC 207 this weekend. But the person that isn't normally now might be interested by seeing that after watching the Saints, game on Sunday or Saturday and be like, oh, I think this is pretty interesting. I kind of like this.
Absolutely. And they chose like I said, that was one of the best cards for the last few years, if not of all time, that makes the top 10. That was a great overall outstanding card, and they picked the right one to throw up at the exact right time. If you're going to show somebody a card, you want them to watch that. You don't want them to watch, some of the other snoozers that we've seen back in the day.
Let me ask you this. You're saying, I don't want to take words out of your mouth, but I just want to throw this out there. Are you saying just the prelim show that they're showing on Fox, or the actual UFC event itself?
Oh, the whole event itself. The whole thing was amazing.
Was better than 205?
I don't know if you would call the whole card better than 205, but the action was amazing. 205 is another one it's up there. It's amazing. That's a great card. That's also probably in my top 10. Oh. But for pure action, if you don't know who the fighters are, 206 was amazing. It's one of the best action cards of all time.
I'm interested to see what a lot of people on the Fifth Round podcast site on Facebook have to say about this, because I think this is a really interesting one, because UFC 205 had all the names.
Absolutely.
It had anything to draw you in if you were even a non-MMA watcher.
I think this is the best way I could explain it. Live, 205 is the card you want to watch out of those two, because it's got all the hype and it's got everything behind it. Yep. But when you're not watching the fights live, it's a little bit different. If you don't have that live atmosphere and that worry that anything could happen at any second, if you can pull your phone out and find out what happened, 206 is the card you want to watch, because the quality of the actual fights in the cage was just that much higher. Now, none of those fights were all that hyped up. The card did not do 205's numbers by a mile on pay-per-view.
Sure.
But the in-cage fights were outstanding.
France, what do you think about that? You think he had onto something there, or?
I mean, the UFC is genius for doing that. They had 4.7 million viewers on Fox on Sunday night.
That's pretty good.
That's amazing. That was one of the most watched time slots and channels of the night, with 4.7 million viewers. Jesus. I mean, and with that card being only 2 weeks past, I mean, it's definitely smart, because why have something 205 that was in November be played that night, when 2 weeks ago you had a one of the best cards of all time, or of this year anyway, fight wise, not name wise, but fight wise, be able to show that.
See, I definitely just find this interesting, because there's no doubt, I mean, hype wise of the year, I think we can agree UFC 205 was it. Am I wrong?
Of course.
Most hyped card of all time.
So when it gets to that, to where now you get to UFC 206. And we talked about this when we were at UFC Fight Night at the TU, because were there a lot of huge names that drew people to Albany? No, not really. But you said it. I remember sitting next to you guys when we were in there, that the fights tonight are going to be really good. And you meant the fact of the actual technical, the actual fighting itself, like you're saying, in the octagon was going to be really good.
Which
it was
were amazing.
It was absolutely entertaining, even though it might not have been all that hyped up, might not have been marquee. It was still, that was extremely entertaining, because the fights were great. 206, same style. The marquee wasn't there. It didn't have all the hype. But the entertainment in the cage was excellent. Top shelf. 10 out of 10. Couldn't get any better.
So I'm interested in it. Of course, guys, if you guys have anything you want on the podcast, hit us up on Facebook, Twitter, on the Facebook page. Of course, give us your comments. We'll get you on the air. Now, talking about this just has me interested, and we have time left, so I want to really pick your guys' brains on this, because we always talk about, at least you guys have the last 2 months, about how good the fights are inside the octagon as opposed to what's hyped up by us, the media. So when we look at certain fights, if I'm you got to take your, UFC goggles off for a second. If I'm just a normal guy watching, what do you think draws in new viewers? Something to where a huge knockout or something or a fight that's so good that keeps you compelled for like the full 3 rounds? Which is going to grab you more, in your opinion? France, I'll start with you.
It really depends. Like the Cub Swanson Doo Hoo Choi fight, that was a 3-round decision, but it was a all-out war. Then you have the fight that came right after it, Matt Brown versus Donald Cerrone. I mean, actually, that went all 3 rounds or into the 3rd round, but that was an amazing knockout. So it really all depends. I mean, it stinks that there's a lot of the casual fans don't enjoy the wrestling and the ground game.
Well, you got to remember, most of them don't really understand it yet.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? So if I'm just a guy who's walking in, if I walked into, even a few years ago, if I walked into your house, we used to always watch UFC fights there, I'm not really knowing exactly what's going on. I'm listening to you two banter back and forth during the fight as if you're Joe Rogan on the side of the octagon calling it. But I don't completely understand. But then you get those people and those fights that draw you in. So, like, I don't remember who it was, but there was a guy I mentioned to you guys at UFC Fight Night where he jumped off the cage and kicked the guy and knocked the guy out by kicking him across the face. I don't remember exactly what fight that was.
That was Anthony Pettis versus Ben Henderson. It wasn't technically a knockout.
He didn't
and he actually fought for he couldn't fight for the interim title, but he fought Max Holloway at 206.
Yeah, so that's a moment that I remember. Like I probably couldn't tell you who fought, but it's a moment I actually remember. So I'm just interested to see what you guys think about this.
It's got to be a mix of everything.
Sure.
One of the biggest failures, I guess you could say, of the whole Fox deal was that UFC on Fox, the first one ever, they decided to throw a title fight up on Fox for free, and it lasted all 30 seconds. And it was really bad for them because it was only like a 2-fight card. Like 2-fight main card, and it ends in 30 seconds, and they got 40 minutes of dead air.
Yeah, you basically get guys sitting at a booth or on a TV stand and talking,
and they're going, "We didn't expect this to happen." Well, welcome to heavyweights and welcome to mixed martial arts. You never know what you're going to get,
especially with Junior Dos Santos.
The perfect mix you have to pull in a casual fan. There's got to be a storyline. I don't care if it's a popular fighter or if it's a popular story. You just need to have a storyline. It's no secret. And UFC fans or MMA fans who want to deny it, you need to look in the mirror. The UFC and especially, and MMA in general, runs on a pro wrestling model. It runs on a WWF old school model of let's build a storyline.
Sure.
Now, the only issue is this isn't the WWE. You can't write the story and have it play out exactly like you want. They've had some great stories written in the past, from Pedro Hizzo all the way up to BJ Penn's return and Rousey dominating everybody and being the greatest athlete ever, that didn't work out because you don't get to decide the outcome.
Yeah. It isn't something where you're watching Monday Night Raw and you can, decide who wins and then comes back the week after and this and that.
Yeah. Rousey doesn't get head kicked and shrug it off and hulk up and drop a leg drop on somebody. She gets kicked in the face and goes unconscious, which is unfortunate for the UFC, but the best laid plans of mice and men don't, it doesn't work out. So you need those storylines. You got to draw people in. But once you draw them in, you need a good mix. I think you need a quick finish, but you also need a 3-round war. You need the Doo Ho Choi fight with Cub Swanson. You need Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner. You need those fights to have people stand in front of each other for 3 rounds and go nuts. Grappling mixed in, whatever, but it's got to be action the whole time, which is where the lighter weight classes, when they first came in, and Brian will remember this with me, when they first brought in 145, 135, and 125, people laughed, said these will never make it. I don't want to watch a guy that small.
125ers.
Yeah, they look like children on a playground.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. And some of the greatest fights we've ever gotten have been at 135, 145, and 125 because those guys have gas tanks and motors that go all day, where a heavyweight makes it 3 minutes at that pace and heaves over and has his hands on his knees, breathing heavy across from a guy doing the same thing. The 135ers are still punching each other in the face. you need those fights to pull the fans. The quick knockouts are important for highlight reels, but at the end of the day, the chief thing is still the storyline. You just have to have the good fights to keep them once the storyline draws them.
Yeah, it seems almost if, at least for me, the way I was drawn in to not only have you guys as good friends to really pull me into this, but to see something spectacular at first, then you're interested. Once you're in, then you want to see the goods. You know what I mean? You want to get drawn in by Conor McGregor in 205. You want to get drawn in by Ronda Rousey in 207. You know what I mean? Now you're into the storyline. Now I'm here. Okay? Now I'm sitting in front of the TV on Saturday night at midnight, not doing anything else, not at the bar drinking, but now I'm watching UFC 207 because I'm in. I'm drawn in. Now I want to see good fights. You have me. Okay? So it's interesting. And, anyone out there on Facebook, Twitter, hit us up. Let us know what you think. What exactly do you think draws in a lot of the viewer? Let us know. Tell us your story. How did you get involved at the UFC? What drew you in? Because I'm really interested to see what other people, was it like me? Did you see a crazy knockout or something to really draw you in? Or was it like, man, I used to watch wrestling. This is really cool. And guys are actually hitting each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's got something to do with it too. Brock Lesnar definitely pulled in a lot of fans. Even CM Punk brought some people over. But I think if there's one thing that they all have in common, what do Brock and and McGregor and Rousey all have in common? Not only did they have the storyline and all of that star power, but
they backed it up.
They finished fights.
Sure.
They finished them. They didn't go to the judges all the time. They finished fights. Not that they have, not that they might never go to the judges, but they came in and finished it. Ronda Rousey ended 3 fights in less than a minute, 15 seconds.
Yeah.
McGregor came in and just started murking people and knocking everybody out with the left hand. That's important. As important as the storyline, but without the storyline, you go nowhere. Cody Garbrandt's got how many knockouts in? Nobody's cared yet.
No one has a clue. I wouldn't have known unless you mentioned it. It's definitely interesting, guys. It leaves a lot to be desired this weekend. It's going to be a great weekend. UFC 207, make sure you check it out. The prelims start at 7:30. UFC Fight Pass, FS1 picks it up at 8 o'clock from there. And then, of
Friday
course,
night.
The main card at 10 o'clock pay-per-view. I'm sure we'll find some way to get a hold of this and watch this. I know it's New Year's this weekend, so it's going to be interesting. France, you're heading out of town. Have fun. Enjoy that. Ian, I think you're working.
Midnight.
I'm
probably going to buy the fights anyways.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. We'll find a way to watch them. Make sure you tape them so I can go watch them because I might be enjoying the bubbly.
Don't miss this, guys, because this will probably, if she loses, this will be the last you see of Ronda Rousey. I'm willing to bet. If she doesn't win this fight, I don't think she gets back in that cage. If she wins,
don't need to.
If she wins, I think she goes on a little bit of a run until she loses. But this could be the last time you see her make that walk to bad reputation with that mean mug like a 3-year-old on her face.
Oh, man. Interesting quote there to end it on. Guys, hopefully, in my opinion, I hope it's not. I love Ronda. I think she's great. I think she draws a lot of fans. So I'm rooting for her this weekend. Make sure you check it out. Again, that's pay-per-view, 10 o'clock. That is Amanda Nunes and Ronda Rousey, UFC 207. Guys, appreciate it again. Of course, we'll get into it next week. We have a huge guest joining the show. France, who is joining us next week?
Hopefully, Uriah Hall will be calling in next week.
Uriah Hall calling into the podcast. That is going to go crazy all over Facebook. I know it is. I'm looking forward to that interview. We will have him on next week on the podcast. Thank you guys for another great episode. Check us out on Facebook. Let us know what you feel. And of course, we will see you guys in the Octagon.